بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. If you're watching this video and it's salah time, please pause it and go pray and come back when you're done. Please check out the description section of this video to support the channel. So one of the most prominent Zionists in the world, Ben Shapiro, was on George Janko's podcast and put his former Christian employee Candace Owens and Muslim reaver Andrew Tate on blast when questioned about them. Ben Shapiro has a colourful history with both Candace and Tate, which I will go into in more detail later in the video. But first, let's take a look at what Shapiro said to George about Candace.
Do you miss your relationship with Candace Owens as like a friend?
The truth is that Candace and I were never, particularly close. I thought we had a pretty cordial relationship. I don't really have a lot of interest in discussing anything beyond that about Candace, frankly. I mean, everything that I've said about Candace has been public record, and people can check my past comments for my views on this.
We want to take down the anchors of the news where they're just pushing one agenda. I just felt from observing both of you guys that have different mindsets. You guys had a beautiful opportunity to share one platform with two different mindsets and show the world, no, we're a real media. She has her own views and I have my own views, but we'll sit here and we'll discuss. We could even debate, or I could just not even acknowledge it, but I'm not going to remove somebody from their position of what they see.
Every company has the Overton window within which there's a set of views that we think are appropriate. It's not our job as a company to pay everybody, no matter how widely variant their views. You can find yourself, or put yourself, more accurately, outside the Overton window of things that we feel are appropriate.
What then would separate you from Fox or CNN from like, no, this is how we think and believe and move, and it's either you're getting on the train or you're getting off?
Well, I mean, I don't think that Fox or CNN or we would be wrong in doing that. If somebody on Fox showed up and was like, okay, I'm a conservative, and Fox is a conservative news network, and then tomorrow they're like, I was lying, would Fox be wrong in firing that person? I don't think so. We don't purport to be anything but conservative. We're conservative. If you show up and I hire you, and Jeremy hires you, and Caleb, we all hire you, we are a self-stated company with a self-stated mission. If that mission is violated, then we have not served our own, not only our customers, we haven't served ourselves. Do I have a moral obligation to continue paying you to be on the platform? I think absolutely not. We're signing a check. For that check, you are paid to provide the viewpoint that you are going to provide within limits that we are happy subsidizing. But I'm not going to pay for somebody to, and neither will our company, is not going to pay for somebody to come on the air on Daily Wire whose views I find morally reprehensible on any topic. I'm not a platform. If I'm Facebook, if I'm X, right, then the idea is the Overton window should be pretty damned broad, because that's essentially the town square. You're almost mimicking what the First Amendment was built for. I feel the opposite of a moral obligation to hire somebody or pay somebody expressing viewpoints that I find to be personally outside the window of what we would want to be subsidizing. Our job as the Daily Wire is not to be Facebook. It is not to be X. It is to be the Daily Wire.
Okay, I understand your perspective now. It's like I'm here to push the narrative that we all came together to make sure America sees.
As you saw, Shapiro was clear that he and Candace were never friends, and that they only ever interacted as colleagues. But hey, who in their right mind would want to be friends with a Zionist shell like Ben Shapiro anyway? The reason why Shapiro told George he doesn't want to talk about Candace is because on top of firing her for speaking up against Palestinian civilians and kids being eliminated, the Daily Wire also legally silenced her. Let's go into the previous public statements he referred to in the clip that he said he made about Candace. You may remember a few months ago, right after Candace left the Daily Wire, she challenged Ben Shapiro to a public debate on the topics of Israel and the definition of anti-Semitism, to which Shapiro appeared to agree to. However, as the Daily Wire were publicly negotiating the terms of this debate, they were also at the same time secretly seeking a gag order, which would force Candace to stay silent on their shaded dealings behind the scenes, as well as stopping her from publicly criticising them. The two-faced con artists at the Daily Wire were attempting to trick the public into thinking that Ben wanted to debate Candace, whilst at the same time trying to stop Candace from debating Ben. They succeeded in obtaining the gag order against her, and as supporting evidence to obtain it, they even used Candace's initial tweet where she requested to debate Shapiro, as well as other tweets she just simply liked, and also her response to some of the Daily Wire slander against her. Their legal argument was that Candace had breached a confidentiality clause in her initial Daily Wire contract, and that is why they succeeded in legally silencing her, despite attacking her first on numerous occasions. And this is also why the debate will probably never happen. Hence why whenever Candace is asked about the Daily Wire, she simply sidesteps giving a response, and it's also why she hasn't fully exposed them as of yet.
Why did you leave the Daily Wire?
Well, unfortunately, I can't talk about the specific reasons that I left the Daily Wire.
Is it true that you signed an NDA and that's why you can't really talk about this in detail?
I cannot speak in detail about any of that stuff.
You can't even confirm whether you've had an NDA?
I am not free to speak about any topic pertaining to contracts signed or not signed.
These are the shady games these Israeli propaganda-spreading media machines play. They present themselves as free speech platforms, when in reality they censor independent voices that expose the truth that they desperately don't want getting out there. And as you saw, Ben Shapiro was open about the fact that the Daily Wire has a narrative and an agenda that they pay people to push, and if their employees don't comply with it, they will fire them. Now, that might be fair if an employee is expressing views that are illegal or immoral, but Candace was simply anti-war and trying to protect civilians and children, which Ben, in his own words to George, said he finds morally reprehensible. Ben Shapiro lied to George Janko when he said that the Daily Wire can't condone liberal views due to being a conservative news outlet, because Candace Owens is as conservative as they come. What he meant to say was the Daily Wire don't condone any anti-Israel views, which is evident from how Ben will openly platform liberals like Destiny, who is also pro-Israel, but legally silence conservatives like Candace Owens for being pro-Palestine using contract clauses. And I'm sure you all caught how Ben Shapiro basically admitted that the Daily Wire is the same as mainstream media outlets like Fox News and CNN, and that they don't allow free speech if it goes against their narrative, thus debunking their past presentation as a free speech platform and confirming that they are part of the mainstream media machine, as well as confirming Candace's past claim that Zionists run the Western media. Ben even went as far as to say the Daily Wire is not Facebook or X. When you're saying heavily censoring platforms like Facebook or X, which are also Zionist run and pro-Israel, are more open with the content they allow than you, then you're basically admitting your platform is not a trustworthy source of media. You can most definitely still be conservative or right-leaning while at the same time being pro-Palestine. The Daily Wire is not a conservative platform. They are an Israeli platform, which is evident through how they totally align with the liberal mainstream media on propaganda that serves Israel. Let's look at the next clip where Ben Shapiro speaks on Andrew Tate.
I've obviously been extremely critical of Andrew Tate. He makes some critiques that I very much agree with. He says some things about masculinity that probably need to be said. I also think he plays a bit of a game where he says two things. One of them is perfectly reasonable, plausible, and then he says something that's completely nuts. And then he bundles those two things together. And then if you argue with him, he says, you're arguing with the plausible thing. I don't think that him as a package deal is a good package deal. We've had very public exchanges on Twitter in which he has, accused me of not being manly enough. I think he's doing more damage than good. I think the things he says about women historically have been quite nasty. I think that his foreign policy is insane, or shall we say wrong, in the extreme morally. Frankly, he's grifting a huge percentage of his audience. His Tate University looks like a pyramid scheme. When I say things like people should get married and they should have kids and they should commit to their church, this is now considered bizarrely old-fashioned by a lot of people who really like Andrew Tate. And if you are preaching a model whereby masculinity is hitting things, walking around shirtless, smoking a cigar, buying Lamborghinis that nobody needs or really can afford, and having multiple beautiful women who may or may not be hired to be there around you, that is a bad model for young men. That is not what men should be aspiring to. What men should be aspiring to is marrying a good woman, having children with that good woman, building a family with that good woman, being part of a community with that good woman and your children, and building the institutions of society that actually make society flourish and function. I agree with his critique, by the way, that, for example, if you want to be attractive to women, you have to be more of a man. Okay? But to me, being more of a man also includes things like religious commitment in the context of a church, and then you have to find a woman to have values with, and you shouldn't be impregnating 10 women at a time, which is something that he has said. To me, the least masculine thing, or one of the least masculine things you can do, is drop your seed everywhere and then not have relationships with your children. If he's doing that for shock value, he should say he's doing it for shock value, and then he should stop doing it for shock value, because people take him seriously, and he has a huge platform. Again, that doesn't mean that all of the critiques of him are right. In fact, I think a huge number of the critiques of him are wrong. If you go back and you look at my evolution on Tate, you'll see I did a video about him maybe 3 years ago in which I was much more laudatory of many of the things he was saying about feminism. And then as he became more and more of this caricature of himself, I became a lot less forgiving of the caricature.
Now we have like the Andrew Tate University, we have the Jordan Peterson University.
I wouldn't speak on Jordan's behalf. I will distinguish between what Jordan's doing and what Andrew's doing. For Jordan, I think that obviously he's attempting to create a classical corpus of knowledge that's more in line with sort of what universities used to be. Andrew seems more like a let me teach you how to do business kind of thing. Whether I think that that's useful or whether I think that his methodologies for doing business are a scam or not is, between me and him probably, or between people who use it and him, since they're paying him.
Honestly, as a Muslim woman, I have to admit it is difficult to defend Tate due to the language he uses and his inclusion of haram subject matters in his content, along with his lack of Islamic referencing to back up his points. And I have been openly critical of him in the past, as well as giving him credit when he does and says things that are correct Islamically. However, Ben Shapiro being on his high horse as if he is any more morally superior than Andrew Tate is a lie. And when Shapiro said he agreed with Tate's previous takes on masculinity and feminism, if you look at the timeline of when Tate made those statements, it was before Andrew was Muslim and was at the height of his sinning. It seems Ben began to clash with Tate after he reverted to Islam, and especially since his foreign policy, as Ben called it, became a pro-Palestinian stance. Is that a strange coincidence or a deliberate motive? It seems like the latter to me, as Ben himself stated at first he was complimentary of Andrew 3 years ago, despite Tate's questionable morals and before he became Muslim. Everything Ben Shapiro said about Andrew Tate, which I'm not disputing, is applicable to Ben Shapiro also. He called Tate a grifter. I already outlined to you the massive grift that is Ben's company, The Daily Wire. He also said Tate's online university is a pyramid scheme and a scam, and that his Daily Wire colleague Jordan Peterson's online university is designed to be like real universities. You mean like those government-run educational institutions that are designed to enslave people with lifelong student loan debt that are also a scam? Okay, Ben. However, I can acknowledge that what Ben said about marriage, family, religion and children was correct. But then Shapiro will at the same time turn around and make statements like these.
Israel kills enough of these sons of bitches that this is not a problem again. There cannot be a ceasefire. Anyone who calls for a ceasefire is a terrorist sympathizer under these circumstances.
Which is Ben advocating for the genocide of religious people in Palestine, Muslim and Christian to be exact, as well as calling for the extermination of thousands of families and children. So Ben is a complete hypocrite when talking about the moral importance of religion, family and children, because when he defends Israel, he defends the destruction of those very things. Ben stated that Tate will bundle together a couple of things that are completely plausible with something completely nuts, and if anyone argues with him, Tate will claim you're arguing with a plausible things. That's exactly what you did, Ben, when you spoke about Candace in the previous clip. And it's exactly what you did when you spoke about religion, marriage and parenting when speaking about Tate to portray your false sense of morality, while at the same time promoting a genocide. In fact, this is what you do in most instances to pass off your Zionist propaganda as virtuous. And did you guys notice that when Ben spoke of religion, both times he said it in the context of a church, which to me means religion excluding Islam? Yes, Ben, Andrew Tate may have exploited women through his previous webcam business, but you are also exploiting men, women and children by covering up Israel's war crimes against innocent Palestinian civilians. So your version of masculinity is also very questionable. And although Ben was right about Tate promoting a brand of masculinity that isn't morally up to par, Ben Shapiro wasn't entirely truthful about Andrew's stance on family and children. Let's take a look at a clip of Tate responding to Ben Shapiro's claims.
I just heard from my producer that Ben Shapiro made a video. Ben Shapiro's upset. Watch out! The Jews are mad at you again. I'm half black, half white, Muslim, live in Romania. I'm a immigrant. I'm a revert. Who do you trust, me or Ben fucking Shapiro?
You're against all genocides, and Ben clearly isn't.
Ben loves genocide. Ben wants people to die who he doesn't like. Do you understand? And we all know Ben's true motives. Get big, get strong, get rich, have a wife. If you only want one, that's up to you. Have 5 or 6 or 7 beautiful children. Raise them to look like you, think like you, talk like you, act like you. Replicas of you. Do not give them to the government. Do not let the government program their minds. Instead of tweeting racist bullshit at me, pretending I'm on Ben's team, when there's no one who's more anti-little shits like Ben than the top fucking G.
Ben told George Janko that Tate is anti-marriage, isn't looking after his kids properly, and is promoting men impregnating 10 random women at a time. Andrew had already refuted Ben's accusations even before he went on George's show, as you saw by stating that he does look after his kids, and by also promoting people having children and families. Tate also refuted Ben's false claim that he is anti-marriage or anti-monogamy by saying it's okay to have one wife as long as people have a lot of kids. So it's no surprise that Shapiro was lying as usual, and was actually mad about being previously humiliated by the Tates in their online exchanges for supporting a genocide in Gaza, rather than their stance on marriage and children. There is no doubt that Andrew Tate has done very questionable and haram things to make money in the past, and as I addressed previously, he still speaks about things that are frowned upon in Islam. But whether people like it or not, Islam permits polygyny for men that wish to take on up to 4 wives and start multiple families. However, there are specific requirements in place in terms of providing complete financial support and the moral responsibility of fair treatment of all parties involved. Most Muslim men don't choose the polygyny option, as it is a massive moral and financial responsibility, and actually prefer monogamy because it is more straightforward and less stressful. And let's be completely honest, most Muslim women don't want to be in these types of marriages either, so they're not very common at all. In conclusion, Ben Shapiro is not a moral authority on anything whatsoever. I trust Candace Owens and even Andrew Tate more than I do someone like Ben Shapiro, because at the very least Candace and Andrew are against the mass elimination of civilians and children in the Middle East at the hands of an extremist settler colonial occupier, and Ben clearly is not. Thank you for watching. Make sure to join my free Telegram group via the link in the description, where we as Muslims can speak freely and without censorship about issues like this. And remember to like, subscribe and become a channel member for access to exclusive content. Until next time, inshallah, Jazakallah khair.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allah